I'm Natalie Walton, and this is Imprint, a podcast about creating a home and life you love. Each week, I'm here to share with you some of the biggest lessons I've learned during my career and life. Some of them I wish I'd learned a lot sooner, because they would have saved me a huge amount of time, stress, and even money. Many of these ideas could have accelerated my journey as a creative and business owner. I also feature interviews with inspiring creatives, entrepreneurs, and experts to help you focus on what's most important in your life. Today, I'm going to interview interior designer Louella Boîtel-Gill. But first, I want to let you know about a free ebook that I've created. It's for anyone who wants to learn how to create a home you love. 7 Days Your Guide to Styling Success is available for free to anyone who visits my website, nataliewalton.com. Just fill out the sign-up form and you'll get it delivered direct to your inbox. I can't wait to share it with you. Now on with today's episode. Hello everyone, I hope you're well. It's a beautiful sunny afternoon. It was quite cold this morning, so it's nice to see the sun shining, and it's actually streaming through into my office, which is really beautiful. I can't wait to share today's episode with you with Louella Boîtel-Gill. She is someone who I've looked up to for many years. I've always loved her style and her energy. Our paths have crossed a few times over the years, but we've never actually met. And recently she moved to Bangalore, which is just down the road from me. So I took the opportunity to go and visit her gorgeous little cottage called Gypsy Creek. And we had a lovely conversation. So I hope that you enjoy it. There are a few little background noises a couple of times through the interview. I think at one point her cat tinkles on past and Louella's wearing some jingly bangles. So you hear those too. And I think there might be even a few motorbikes, but that's all part of the atmosphere. And it was really lovely to get to know more about her backstory. And I hope you enjoy it too. Louella, thank you so much for inviting me into your home today. It's lovely to finally meet. I feel like our paths have been crossing a lot over the years. So
yeah,
I'm really glad that we finally get to have a chat. So I guess first of all, I just wanted to find out a little bit about your journey. And in particular, I'm always interested to hear about people's childhoods and like the type of home or environment that you grew up in and how that's maybe informed the choices that you've made along the way. So do you want to share a little bit about that part of your life? And
Sure.
Yeah.
And hello. Very welcome. Is that going to be a problem with the cat walking around?
No.
Okay,
No.
that little bell is the
Yes,
cat.
no, it's good.
I grew up in England, in the country, in an old 300-year-old thatched cottage. And it was the classic kind of, Sundays were roaring fires and cozy. And my mother was a teacher, and so kind of creative in terms of doing lots of craft and stuff like that. And definitely had a strong feel for how she worked the house out. And she was really good spatially with working out where furniture went, and she always made it feel right. My father had a helicopter business and flew helicopters, still does. He's 82 and he's off flying in North Wales at the moment.
Wow.
I know, which is amazing. And he could really draw. He didn't draw much, but he would do funny little cartoon drawings that were always really precise and amazing. And I grew up as a child very much feeling like, well, I don't draw. I can't. I would scribble and, but I wasn't, say at school, I was not that child that was like, I loved art classes, but I considered myself as somebody who couldn't draw. And there were all these girls in my class that were amazing. So I just kind of had the hat on for myself. I can't draw. So kind of from a creative point of view, it wasn't until I was doing my A-levels that I actually started studying art. And it was because in first year of A-level, I was doing biology, couldn't bear it, was like literally dying of boredom and just thought I've got to find something else. And I knew I loved design. I loved interiors. And so I thought, how do I get into that? And it was literally a case of how can I do a subject that I don't hate? And I thought, well, I'll give art a go. So I went to talk to the art teacher. He said, if you do me, I need something like, I think he said, I want 18 drawings from you over the summer. And I need you to do 6 still lives, 6 portraits, and 6 landscapes. Just have a go and just see what happens. And the minute he said, go and do it, I just thought, right, I'm just going to try and do this. And I literally tried to draw. And I was really surprised. I was like, oh my God, I actually can do this. And I really enjoyed it. And my mother still has some of those drawings that I did that summer framed. Like I did portraits of my sister, just in pencil, then with watercolor and, quite big ones. And I really enjoyed it. I was like, oh my God, I can actually do this.
Wow.
And then I went to art college. So I did art college in Winchester for a year, a foundation course, and then went on to Leeds and studied furniture design and interior design. And it was literally like, I felt like I fell into art and creativity, even though I suppose I'd always, from really young, I'd always probably every 3-4 weeks decided to totally change my bedroom around. And that has never stopped. It's like, my desire to nest and kind of create spaces. That was something I always did, but I never really put any kind of name on what that was. It was just something that I did. And then when I kind of went to art college and ended up realizing I just loved making things. And so I found a furniture design course where I actually got to be down in the workshop welding and on the lathes and really full on making stuff with the technicians. That's when I really felt like I'd found what I wanted to do. And then I just had to work out how I did it without necessarily jumping in to running my own business at 23, which I knew I didn't want to do because I hate paperwork. Give me all the fun stuff, fantastic, but I don't want to do all the rest. And that's when I got on board working for Terence Conran in London.
Yeah. And so
that was a very long answer, wasn't it?
No, it was great. It was great. Did you have any sort of mentors in that early part of your teenage years, or even while you were at art college, that really showed that it was possible to have that kind of career?
Do you know what? I think when I think both my parents made me feel always that I could do anything. It was very much instilled in me that as long as you did the work at school and studied, you'd have this good footing and then you could choose to do whatever you wanted to do, and that it was important that you did something that you love. Then when I was at art college, I remember going off to see all these different universities for degree courses, and I met somebody up in Leeds, one of the students who was, I think at that point, maybe a second-year student on the furniture design course, connected with him, kept in touch, met him up in London, used to go to art galleries with him, and he very much kind of coached me in terms of my application to that course. And he fully inspired me as somebody that I just looked at him and just went, it was never something, he was a friend, I never went out with him. But he's somebody I'm still in touch with. And he very much inspired me with he was so positive and had so much energy. And he had this life force that just said, you can do anything, you can be anything. I was like, oh my God, you're right. There is no closed door. And I think that really something clicked in me and made me feel that was how I felt. I just never really realized it. So I think he really opened my eyes to how I could use what I love doing.
That's amazing that you had both your parents were like that in many ways, and then to meet that person.
They've both always been incredibly supportive. And from one point of view, I think my mother sometimes kind of felt, well, how are you going to use this degree? And I was like, well, I don't know yet, but I feel like it's right. So she just went, well, if that's what you feel is right, go for it, do it. And they fully, supported that. So, yeah, it was very much, there was a lot of positivity and that sense that the world was bigger. And I think that's something that's always been really strong for me, and maybe why I jumped on a plane when I had an offer to come and work in Melbourne from London. The world was this place that was a huge place, but obtainable. So when I came over with Conran to help set up the store at George's in 1998, beginning of 98, that was literally packing all my stuff up in London into a container, shipping it all over. And I'd never been to Australia before. It was literally like, well, I'm going to give this a go. This sounds fun. And I knew I could come back if I needed to, but it was always this open-ended, well, I didn't feel I wanted to continue living in London. It just didn't feel like my pace. And I got to Melbourne and I just didn't look back.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to backtrack a little bit though. So you were doing your course, and then how did you then get the position at Terence Conran? Because I mean, that was
quite random. That was quite random. So when I finished my degree course, for the summer holidays, I decided to work at the adventure playground, working with kids in Battersea Park. And it was the most incredible adventure playground, that it was big, crazy structures that the staff got involved with building. So it was very much hands-on. And my first project, when they realised I could weld, they said, can you make us a barbecue? Can you go and scrounge some metal? You know, they expected like, you know, an oil drum cut in half with legs on it. I ended up making them like a 3-metre high Tintin rocket. And the bottom of it kept, you know, was like all the coals. Then you had a middle layer that cooked everything, and we had a vegetarian side and a meat side. And then you had this door at the top that said afterburner, and that kept everything warm. And it was still there 15 years later. I think they've taken the park down now, which is really sad. But I did that for the summer, and then kind of had this. I used to go into the Conran Shop, and through talking to staff there, just working in the shop, I realised that the staff in there that were working just at the tills and on the floor there, they were all fully qualified architects, designers. There was this hub of creativity in there. And it was like a holding pattern for them. They were kind of in there working out what they wanted to do. So people would come, people would go, but it was this force of creativity. I was like, oh, this could be a really nice place until I work out what I want to do. So I got a job just working in the shop, and then got thrown in because they were short of people working on the visual merchandising team. And I ended up working on that team, which I absolutely loved. So I was up a ladder half the day with a drill in one hand, you know, and then I, you know, do the electrical stuff and ended shorting out the whole of Michelin House. And like, oops, sorry, bit too confident with my sad electrical skills. But so kind of fell into it. You know, applied for a job, literally just working on the shop floor, just in sales, just literally kind of, you know, shop girl, and then fell into this opening in the visual merchandising team, which I just completely loved. I was like, oh my God, this is fun.
Yeah. So tell me about that, because obviously such an iconic business and store, and man, were there very strict parameters about what you were allowed to do, or how, like,
yes
give us a bit of an insight into
and no.
the process.
It was a team of people, 5 people, and there was a very strict structure in terms of, for example, every 6 weeks there was a shop floor change, which meant changing every piece of furniture, all the upholstery, all the sofas, and there'd be a whole colour theme. Every 6 weeks, whole new drop of all that upholstery would come in, and we'd rearrange the whole floor, and it was all strictly planned. And we'd start when the shop shut at 6 o'clock, and we'd work all night. Or we'd go home at about 2 a.m, and somebody would have either cooked a huge meal, and we'd get a whole load of the other staff in. We'd all be working around together. And so all the display team would be delegating, going, right, I need 5 people over here. Quick, run. We need this. 2 sofas to come off the truck. That, you know, the delivery guys would be there working at the front. It was this incredible energy and excitement. And we'd run around, and then we'd come back in at 8 the next morning, and then do all the little display on the tables. And we'd spend hundreds of pounds a week on fresh fruit and vegetables for the displays. You know, it was always somewhere where that was such a massive part of the selling tool. And there was a structure in terms of, just as when you're designing fashion, there's that structure of when the drops are. And, you know, there was a structure in terms of when we did things. The swing area downstairs, which was a whole display area in itself, the windows, Christmas windows, the formula with all of those. But within that, you had complete freedom to create what you wanted. Like, we would be given areas as a team. There would, 5 of us. We would each, it would be like, right, Louella, this area here, and I'd be in charge of one whole area of the shop, and it would be up to me to do designs on the table, things from the ceiling, work out, have fun with it. So there was complete freedom with that in terms of how can you come up with something that's completely interesting and different, and but within a time frame, I suppose a timetable. That the timetable was the structure more so than what you could and couldn't do, but you very quickly understood what was right for Conran and what wasn't. You know, like, for example, we only ever used fresh fruit and vegetables, never used fake flowers, never used anything that wasn't just something you would have at home. There was just a basic sense of, I suppose, integrity, and it had to feel real, and people had to walk in and fall in love with the space, and it was that sense of making the shop read like a home. So you'd walk in and go, oh my God, this sofa, and Jesus, it's amazing with this coffee table, and they'd buy the whole lot. They'd literally buy the whole setting with the rug in that colorway because you'd created this emotional experience for them. So yeah, it's a yes and a no, a yes and a no.
And what about, so you said that there was this amazing energy there.
Yeah.
How do you think that he cultivated that within his business?
I think generally just the incredible respect everybody had for what he had created. You know, he had started the first shop which actually produced modern furniture at high street prices, you know, with Habitat. And that was unheard of. So that was just huge. And then, you know, the Conran Shop was kind of the beautiful, I suppose, more elite, top end range of all that. So, you know, and there was a price tag that went with it, but there was this huge respect that you literally could always walk into the Conran Shop and be blown away by how beautiful the product was. The product selection, you know, he always had a very tight, I want to say tight rein, but it's not really that. He was always very, very involved, even though he had a team of buyers that would go all over the world sourcing, and they'd all come back and have these meetings and they'd all sit around. But at the end of the day, he had the say on every single thing that came into that shop. And I think the fact that so there was I think just a respect. But he wasn't based at the shop. He was based over at Shad Thames, where he had an apartment and lived during the week. And that's where the Conran contract was. So they would do all the big contract jobs. And so he'd come over, and sometimes he'd come over once a week, twice a week. Sometimes you wouldn't see him for a month. But we'd always know because his driver would call ahead and go, Terence is on his way. And so suddenly this call would go out in the shop, Terence is on his way. So everybody would be aware. Or sometimes his wife, Vicky, would come in and she'd go, Terence is round the corner, everybody, and he's in a real bait. Watch out. So, and he could be quite scary when he would storm through and you'd go, okay, don't say hello today, just keep quiet, look busy. But when he was lovely, he was charming and completely gorgeous and would sit and kind of go, right, so tell me what's going on here today and have a really good chat. So he wasn't involved in the day-to-day running of the staff in the shop, obviously, but he was very much, you know, he would always make a point of talking to people when he came through, which made the people that were new, like the young people that were really new there, they get really nervous when he came in because he is such a big figurehead.
And do you think that your aesthetic at that stage was in tune with the Conran aesthetic, or do you think that influenced it, or?
I think it has to have to some degree, but everything I instinctively felt, I think, was very much in tune with what I was doing at Conran anyway, which is why the whole thing became very easy and fluid. So it all just felt very natural. And it's an interesting one. It is kind of like a philosophy, I suppose, the whole, it's that sense of keeping things very real, but having fun and theatre with it. So there'd be times where we'd do things that you would never do at home. And, you know, stack chairs up in a big tower or you hang them from the ceiling and but it was about being playful with it without it being forced. There's a kind of looseness to it. So, yeah, I mean, obviously it has to have had a strong impact on me aesthetically. but it all felt very natural. So it felt like it was something that just came together as what I should have been doing.
And why was it that you were the one tapped on the shoulder to come to Melbourne? Had you sort of gone up through the ranks at that stage?
No, it was, I think, so somebody that has been really, really special in my life all the way through, and I've actually been in a 5-year long-distance relationship with, is Alex Wilcock, who now has Maker and Son. He was the buying director and creative director at Conran at the time. And he would often turn up at the end of a shop floor change at 11 o'clock at night. He and Sophie, his wife, and Terence, his daughter, would have been out for dinner. He would jump out of the cab, roll his shirt sleeves up and go, right, what can I do to help? And he'd stay for a few hours and help and always muck in. And he was kind of like our boss. And I always got on really well with him. And he just came into the office one day and he said, hey, you want to travel, don't you? And, you know, we'd had conversations where I was like, oh, sometimes I feel like I'm just over London. And I said, yeah, I really do. And he said, what would you think about moving over to Melbourne? There's an opening in Melbourne. And it was because a year before, I'd had a meeting with him where I'd actually resigned. And I'd got a job at Designers Guild down on the King's Road, kind of doing the same thing. And I just felt like I wanted to change. And he persuaded me to stay. And I was literally, I'll come and talk to you, but I'm not staying. I've got the job. I'm going, but I'll come and talk to you. Anyway, by the time I left, he'd convinced me to stay, told me there was so much happening that he didn't want me to miss out on, and given me a pay rise. I was like, blimey. Okay, I was not expecting that. And so here I was, still at the Conran Shop. And he said, I told you there was a lot going on. That's when we opened the shop in Marylebone in North London, just off Baker Street. So I did that. I went and did worked on in Japan for a month at Fukuoka, where they had a store. And then he came in and said, there's this position in Melbourne, and part of the contract is it's a franchise with Steve Bennett, who was Country Road. But we need somebody from our team here to make sure that the thing is handled in such a way that we still absolutely represent Conran. And we only do the sign-off on this franchise if one of our team goes. And I was like, I'm in. Totally, I'm in. I was married and I went home and said to him, Marjorie, hey, I've just been offered a job in Melbourne. And he's like, awesome, I'll resign tomorrow. He'd lived in Melbourne before and just went, oh my God, brilliant. And I think 6 weeks later, all my stuff got packed up and we went to Bali for 2 weeks on the way, and arrived on New Year's Eve on the last night of 97. And the shop opened on the 14th of February in 98. And
well, sorry, I was going to say, and what was your initial sort of experience or feel for Melbourne or Australia when you first arrived? Because obviously you hadn't been there before.
No, I'd never been. My godmother lived down on the Mornington Peninsula. And so I had a sense of family here, but I'd never been. And I arrived and I remember my godbrother picking us up at the airport. And within minutes, I remember seeing a cockatoo fly past and going, oh my God. Yeah, I was quite surprised at the size of these birds that, I was used to, the magpies being the biggest thing you saw really, or, the robin redbreasts and wrens. And then within a couple of weeks, I went for the weekend and stayed. Alex and Sophie had a house in Daylesford, a 50-acre property, kind of off-grid, and it was just amazing. Marjorie and I went and stayed there, and I woke up and there was a kangaroo sitting outside on the deck, and I literally was like spun out going, oh my God, I'm in Jurassic Park. It blew me away. It took me years to get my head around the fact that there were no rivers. In Victoria, there was like, where's all the water? I was like, doesn't rain. It's so dry. There are no, I'd grown up where rivers were everywhere because, in England it rains all the time. But that sense of arriving in this country, there was a massive positivity. I remember almost falling over when I jumped on my first tram in Albert Park to go to work. And the tram driver beamed at me and said, morning. was like, oh my God, you spoke to me. I was like, oh, hello. Really shocked. You know, you get on the bus in London, you never have a driver speak to you. Oh, God. You know, they're literally driving, no eye contact. That whole on the tube, no eye contact. And I get on a tram, and then ding, ding, morning. It's like, wow, I like it here. Everyone's friendly. And there is, I think that it really, it was something really strong, this sense that people wanted you to achieve something and do well and give it a go. And that came across really strongly compared to the feeling I always had in London, which was this much more, it was a heavier, more dour kind of like, God, life's quite a struggle. It felt much more lighthearted and breezy. And the sun was shining. That was nice.
And so how did that project go then, sort of overseeing the Conran store?
Look, it was amazing, but they struggled financially, which meant within a few weeks of opening, I felt like I was being backed into a corner, being pushed to display stuff in a way that I didn't feel was correct on any level for Conran. Pilot high, sell it fast. I was like, this is like, it's like, it just felt wrong. And after 6 months, I was pulling my hair out going, oh my God, I can't do this. But if I'd left, I would have been on the first plane home because my visa was tied into work for 4 years. And that's when I ended up, somebody came and sponsored me for residency. And I ended up doing a whole load of event management stuff at the races and marquee designs and stuff like that. And they sponsored me. So that's how I ended up staying. And the Conran Shop was open literally a year. And then, sadly, it kind of died a death, George's. But the opening of that building and the renovation of that building, that whole area just took off. But George's didn't, which was really sad. You know, everybody loved it, but you know, they didn't have the backing to keep it going for the 3 or 4 years that it needs to become a proper destination. Anyway.
So then how did you then, obviously, I guess what you're most known for then is working with Mark Tuckey. So then how did that kind of come about at that point? So you did event management or styling. And so how did you then get into the other side?
When I left Conran, I was working for part of the year. I do a few months of the year working with an event management company in Melbourne doing designs for the races, and I'd work with their clients. And then the rest of the time I was doing more kind of interior design work, doing retail spaces, doing people's houses. And I met Tuckey. I'd met Tuckey and I'd spent about 2 years saying no, I would not catch up with him or go out for dinner with him or whatever. And eventually kind of went, oh, okay. Anyway, we got together, and within about a week of us going out together, I got involved in the business. And he was like, come on. I've been trying to get you to help for 2 years, but I was busy and I kind of was like, I don't think I want to get involved. Got involved, and it was like having a lolly shop to play with. So very quickly jumped in and did a massive amount of design work and did a whole new range of furniture, which was really good fun. Stripped back a whole lot of stuff that had been sitting around for ages and felt like it was a bit dated. Got rid of all the red timber, went much more kind of Scandinavian with it, and then got my friend Rachel Castle involved to help us rebrand it. And she was like, you've just got to call it Mark Tuckey. At that stage, it was called Ancient Modes. And she said, you've got to lose the name, got to call it just Mark Tuckey. And he was like, oh, I don't know about that. It's a bit weird, isn't it? And she was like, no, it's really simple. It just is what it is. And she had a branding agency with Alex from Conran. So she was a friend of mine that worked at Conran, but I didn't know well in London. And then we became really close when she moved back to Melbourne with her husband and family. So that just started the whole, Tuckey literally handed over all the creative. I took over that, and with Rach, we put this really strong imprint of a brand identity on the business, and we're really kind of quite harsh with, right, we get rid of this, we get rid of that we don't need any of that stuff anymore. Let's keep it really clean. And turnover doubled in the first year, which was amazing. Tuckey was thrilled. He was managing the whole structure of how the business ran, all the strategy, and that's how it went on.
Did Did you enjoy the designing process?
Yeah,
like the
love
furnishing?
it. Yeah.
Was that the first time that you'd actually put your furniture design?
No, I'd been designing
use,
stuff and having stuff made on a very small scale. But yeah, I suppose since college, where I was drawing stuff up and, you know, making stuff, I'd been making stuff for clients, but just one-off pieces, as opposed to things that were going into production. But I would go in and work with the team who I loved at Tuckey. And I'd be in the workshop and we'd be prototyping stuff. And no, I mean, it was fun. It was really, really fun. And, you know, the first couple of pieces I designed were the round tripod table, which is still one of the best-selling tables, and the OXO round coffee table. They're things that are still very much key pieces that still do really well.
Do you have would you like to do that again or more of that furniture design? Or do you think that you're more into interiors?
I love it, and I still do it. I still, you know, like when I'm doing a house for somebody, well, I did, when I was still living in Avalon, I did a house for Justin Hems across the water and designed a great big island bench for him, really similar to the one I've ended up putting in here. So I still love doing that. Look, yeah, I mean, I could quite happily jump in and go, right, I'll do that again, because I do. I love seeing things created. But I think my favourite thing is creating spaces. So I love doing, you know, this is a really old table that I made before I knew Tuckey. And I had a boyfriend who was also a furniture maker. An amazing guy called Ben Sibley, who still makes furniture but is now very much an artist, and his father was an artist, Andrew Sibley. So he made this for me, and I remember telling him that I was going out with Tuckey, and he's like, oh no, because he was like, oh, there's competition, as in, you know, with work and stuff. So I don't know, I think it'll always be something where I will always draw up furniture and have it made. You know, I still go back now. Tuckey and I, you know, it was quite tricky when we divorced, but we're back at a point now where we're on good terms, and it's all about managing the children and keeping them completely happy. And that's always been a focus, which has been great. But I help him a bit with the business now, and, you know, which is kind of nice. It's kind of settled back down to, like, you know, he'll call and say, hey, can you have a look at this? Can you work out, you know, if he's doing any homewares, which he's about to set something up here. You know, I'm helping with the interior on that, and then going through a homeware selection, which is good because it makes sense on, you know, as a whole, for making sure everybody's happy. And if he's happy, the kids are happy. If the kids are happy, he's happy, I'm happy. You know, it's good. Yeah. But I'm really busy doing a whole lot of interior projects up here, which I'm completely loving because I keep meeting these amazing people that become really close friends that I'm working with, and we get completely overexcited about, oh my God, look at this thing I've just found. It'll be amazing. We can do this. And I found some amazing places up here for sourcing. And I'm starting to find places where I can go and get stuff made. But then I'll still put stuff through the Tuckey workshop. So I'll send drawings through, get quotes from them, and work it out that way, which it's good. It's a nice freedom to have when I know how they construct things and how they make things. I know I can totally trust, right, can you just make this and it's easy.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a bit about your design process as well, because I think one of the questions that people often ask of anyone really that's an interior designer or a stylist or whatever is, people, I don't know, sometimes they get fixated on it too, is about this idea of like, what's your style? Like, what's your decorating style? Do you have something that you feel is like a common thread through all your different spaces? Because you did your place in Melbourne, which was like, that was a terrace, wasn't it? Yeah. And then like you had your beach house in Avalon, and here now you're sort of a bit more in the hills.
I think look, everything I do is very much about it being livable. It has to tell a story. I'm not somebody that would just go shopping for furniture for a house for somebody and, you know, get everything from 3 different shops, where you could make something really beautiful and comfortable, but it would feel like a showroom. I'm much more about throwing a whole lot of stuff in that makes it feel like there's a whole story and a pattern of walking in and going, wow, feeling like these are things that have been collected over the years. And I think that's what makes it feel homely. When I do a space, it's all about wanting it to, it's nesting. It's just, I have this innate sense of like desire to nest. So I introduce a lot of old pieces in with new pieces. And I think it's about having that kind of urge to make it feel like it's always been like this. You know, we're sitting here with these Danish chairs. These are absolutely my favorite chair ever. And I love them because they are old. They're kind of, they're late 50s. They're beautiful leather. There's something about the integrity of them. They're incredibly comfortable. The Borg Morgensen Spanish chair. Everything about them is just absolutely beautiful. And they're big and they're practical, and women love them, men love them, but they have that patina of age. So they have a contemporary feel to them, but they're really old and bashed up, and they've got stains on the leather, and, they've had their own life. And I think it's things like that that make people feel comfortable when they come into a space. You can still add all the things that make it feel a bit more zhuzhy and a bit more city and a bit more, a bit more glamorous. But for me, I'll always pair them back to simpler pieces, I think. Although there's nothing minimal about my style. I love minimal, and I love to have areas where I've got clear spaces. But I love little things too much, and they tell stories. I've got a cabinet behind you full of tiny little bits and pieces, and it's just, they're all little things where I know where each of them came from. And that to me makes me feel comfortable in my space, because it's like having all your little friends around you, or having all your animals around.
So how do you then balance that out? I guess one of the things when someone does love pieces and collections is then how do you prevent it from feeling too cluttered?
So you give them a sense of order by creating something for it to live in. For example, a cabinet, and it could be an old bashed up cabinet, but something that they can put all those matchboxes that they collect, or whatever it might be, something to give it structure and order without it feeling forced. But, I think the biggest job you can do for somebody as a designer in a home is make the home work. So I've worked with a lot of families where we've looked at, I've done a few mudrooms lately where it's literally made the family home work, because suddenly it's like, right, kids, put all your stuff in there. They've got a place to put their school hat, their blazer, their school bag, their sports gear. They've got and the kids know where it all goes. So they go, right, put your stuff away. Bang, 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 bang. Instead of, where am I going to put it? If you can give a structure to all of that, which is often really hard because you go, how am I going to fit it in? Making things work so storage is key. It makes a space work better. And it becomes easier for the whole space to function without it being a cluttered mess. So if you can give, for any clutter that builds up, if you can give a space for that and think about that in the design process, what needs to go in the laundry? What needs to go in the kitchen? What's going where? And try and keep it somewhere where you can have clear spaces that then you can add little bits to if you want, but it doesn't become too overwhelming.
Yeah. Well, you've just recently moved, or not that long ago, from Sydney to up here in the Byron area.
So don't even look under the house.
Well, I was going to say, though, in relation to this kind of clutter idea is, like, what did you use as a guide of, like, what you hold on to and what you let go?
Yeah, okay. It's a really good question, actually. So I had a fully furnished house that was much bigger than this in Sydney. And this house, fully furnished, that I was, that I would live in and work in when I was up here, but I was back and forth to Sydney almost every other week. And so every other week it would be listed on Airbnb and would often be rented out for a couple of days. And it was, there was a clarity about it because it was somewhere where I wasn't living, so there wasn't all that clutter. And I didn't want to lose that when we moved up here. And I wasn't actually sure that it would work living here because it was a lot smaller. And so I've added a whole lot more artwork in since the move. All the beds that I have here, I had doubles of them in Sydney. So for example, there was a whole lot of furniture that was all stuff that I had designed and had made through Tuckey. They were the pieces that I didn't think twice about letting go of, because I was going to bring them all up here and store them. Then I thought, this is crazy. I can always just get them made again. So it made no sense hanging on to them. So they're the things I kind of liberated, which made the move a little bit easier. But all the things that I held on to are all in boxes under the house, and I'm putting storage in, proper shelving in under the house. It's a Queenslander, so I've got a lot of space under there. And it means I'll have access to it all. So everything's packaged up into black tubs, everything's labelled, and it might be little white ceramic bits. And it'll be like a filing system under the house that I can still access. So at any point I can go, oh, I've got that lovely white vase. I can go down there and know it'll be in the box of white stuff. And that's like me and books. I kind of, if I've got a big bookshelf, which I don't have at this house at the moment, everything's colour blocked, because I remember books by the colour of their cover. So everything would be this rainbow pattern of shelves. I let a whole lot of stuff go. I gave stuff away to friends. I sold a whole lot of stuff through Instagram, the bigger furniture pieces, which was great. But all the things that I held on to because I thought I'll never find that again. They were funny little old things, or sentimental things that I'd been given. And there's a lot of stuff under the house. I'm a real magpie, but it was really cleansing to go through it all and clear it. And, years of collecting stuff for styling shoots and props and, which I had in areas in the house kind of stored already, and I would swap in and out of. And so it was a big process, the move. It was huge. But instead of I had so many people say to me, why don't you just get rid of it all? I was like, I can't. It's stuff that I love. Some of it's, I've got a staircase in that room there that I had. It was a present from my sister from the Conran Shop. It's an Indian staircase from a barn. I've had that for 25 years, and I could never let go of it, even though it didn't fit in any of my other houses. Here, it's perfect. And there's a wardrobe. I've created a little wardrobe space underneath it where it leans against the wall. So it's things like that where you go, I'm so glad I didn't just let that go. They're things that I love, and things that I treasure. But you've got to be rational and make sense of it. There's no point spending huge amounts on storage unless it's just not an issue, for kind of packing up stuff that you're never going to use. But I know it's all stuff that I will look at again. So I think it was that was my line. If I haven't looked at it for 10 years, and I look at it and don't really want to put it in the house, that's when I let it go. But if I still look at it and go, I really might want to use that one day, then I hang on to it and store it.
So another question I wanted to ask you about design is that obviously people are finding you probably, you're sort of known within certain circles, and I guess that's how you're getting your clients. Do they give you carte blanche, or is it very much a collaborative process, or how do people approach you?
Since I've been up here, it's been interesting. Clients have come and had a meeting at the house here, which becomes like a kind of almost like it's like my book in itself. It's like my portfolio, because they come in here, they get a sense of what I do, because obviously I've been very specific about doing this house exactly how I love to live and what I love. And that has been literally the switch that's made them gone, oh my God, this is what we want. Yep. And carte blanche to a certain degree, but everybody lives their life slightly differently. So it's about listening, and there's an instinctive pattern and flow, but then it's about, is that going to work for that specific client? So some clients might want a little bit more structure, a little bit more modern, they might want to go fully kind of, vintagey, kind of industrially. So each client is very different, but it's because they have this house now to see as something very specific that I've done, that I think is like having that page that they look at going, yep, okay, now I'm confident for you to go, yeah, you tell us what we should be doing, and then we negotiate through that. It's made it much easier, much easier.
And would you say that most of them have found you through Instagram? Has that been like the primary tool?
Yeah, well, also through friends. So I had before I moved up here, when I was coming up here a lot, I had a few people that I already knew that I got to know and got really close to. So Kimberly Amos from Atlantic in Byron, she was just amazingly supportive. Emma Lane, who has the farm, Emma came in one day and went, "Oh my God, you have to meet my friend." She introduced me to her friend, who immediately walked in, and the place was an absolute mess and there were painting sheets down everywhere. She just went, "Oh my God, literally, I just want you to come and do my house. You have exactly what I'm looking for. I want it to be a home. You know, I've got 4 children, 2 grown up, 2 much younger." And we had a lot of fun designing a cabin and doing a safari tent for them. And then as well through Instagram, I've had referrals from people I used to work with in Melbourne. So I've got a client up here at the moment who is from somebody I worked with when I first came 20 years ago to Australia, who said, "You need to talk to Louella. I think you'll be on the same page." It's they'd tried a whole lot of different interior designers and hadn't clicked with anybody. And they're all people I have huge respect for, massive respect. And, people you would know. And for some reason, they kind of clicked with me. And whether that was purely aesthetic or personality as well, because I think both go hand in hand. You have to, when you're working on somebody's home, I think it's crucial that they feel comfortable with you and that they trust you and that they know that you're going to listen and not just dominate and dictate. I know a few people who have worked with incredible people who have been very strong in their opinion of this is what and at the end of it, they've been like, "Well, you've created something completely beautiful, but we can't live here. We're a family, So yeah, definitely a combination. Definitely a combination.
Yeah. And one last question I wanted to ask you was about energy, because I've always had a sense from, even though we haven't met in person prior to today, that you seem like a really positive person and that you've got this kind of warmth about you, which I guess is reflected in your spaces as well. And I actually just noticed this morning, I think you had a post, I don't know if you did it this morning or recently on Instagram, about, you sort of said that when you first moved up here, you sort of took a bit of a break because you were settling in, and then you sort of mentally felt like you were ready to start doing work, and then all of a sudden these opportunities started to come your way.
That was last night. I felt this complete blockage and inability to post, and I think it's very much to do with COVID. I'm feeling conscious of so many people having such a hard time, and I kind of feel guilty that I'm feeling so lucky that we were able to do this move. And it's not like everything's just a breeze. It's not like I'm sitting here going, "Oh, I don't need to work. Everything's cruisy." I do. I really do. But saying that, things have been quiet and I've been really relaxed and just feeling like, you know what, it'll all be fine. And it is fine. I'm now really busy with the most beautiful clients. And I think, there's something about Byron with that sense of energy and camaraderie and that sense of manifesting. A year or so ago when I was up here thinking, God, I'd really like to get a bit more work up here so I can justify being up in the house. And I literally started thinking about what I would want, which was like, I'd love to get another house like this and do it. But, I can't actually at the moment go and buy another house. And then within a week, I was introduced to somebody who wanted me to do that for them. It's like, oh my God, that was pretty good. And that just seems to happen in Byron, that whole sense of a positivity. And I am a very positive person, and it takes a lot to kind of quash my sense of kind of sunshine, I suppose. I'm like, you know what? I'm very glass half full. And I always try and take a positive approach and go, you know what? It will be all right. We've just got to find the route.
Do you think that's always been in you?
Yeah.
Or do you think,
Yeah. I think that's innate in me. And I think I've watched people who aren't like that, and it really upsets me because I just think it's unnecessary and it puts them through a lot of pain. And so I think I'm specifically wanting to be the opposite. I feel it's really important to be positive, because the actual action of being positive has a spin-off, whether it's how the spin-off with other people that you meet and what that does to them, and then the reaction that you get back, which is then more positive, and that builds you up further. It's like happiness creates happiness, love creates love. And I have a lot of friends around me that make me feel incredibly loved and incredibly supported. And all of that just works together to create this kind of flow. Energy is a crucial part of, or feeling like there's good energy is a crucial part of my day-to-day existence, and something I really value. And empathy is a huge thing for me, and how that works with people, and how that makes people respond and react.
Great. Okay, before you go, I've got some questions. Now, I had interviewed you many, many years ago, but I thought it might be fun just to go through these questions again, because it might be interesting to compare and see,
compare and contrast.
Yes, yep, how you've kind of gone on your journey since then. So it's just whatever comes first to your mind. Yep. So unfortunately, it's always the hardest question, which is the first, but just go with it. Which is, which 5 words best describe you?
Oh, God.
So just whatever first comes to mind.
Okay. Happy, sunny, creative, vibrant. How many is that? 4?
Yeah.
One more. Thoughtful.
What's the best life or career lesson you've learned?
Wow. Do you know what? I can remember doing this interview for you, but I can't remember for the life of me what I said. It's a long time ago, isn't it?
Yeah.
The best life or career lesson. Career lesson, I remember really taking on board something that Terence Conran said, and it was about your home and how to live in it without it being cluttered. And he had this concept that if you took everything out onto the lawn and only brought back in what you really wanted to live with, that would clarify things. And it's true, you don't necessarily have to take it out onto the lawn, but if you can keep working on things and simplifying things and clarifying, which is what, I potter around the whole time tweaking things. And it's almost like a therapeutic thought process. As I'm thinking about work or doing things, I might wander around the house and just tweak things and clear surfaces. And I think that's something really helpful in your brain uncluttering. So, the whole, we all have read all the, the declutter stuff over the last few years. And it's hugely important. I think that's something that really resonates. And life lesson. Ooh. Life lesson. I think my kids have taught me the most on how to juggle trying to be a present and good parent, and accepting that maybe I have always needed to work as well, or need from a point of view of creatively and mentally. I think it was a real lesson for me when I accepted that it was okay to work or want to work, as well as being a mum of young children, little babies. And I realised I was a much better mother if I could be working as well. And I would then put much more energy and drive into my time with them than if I was 24/7 just a mum, which we all know can be incredibly grueling and frustrating. But the most joyful experience of your life. And I realized that if I allowed myself to work, as long as I knew that they were happy in an environment when I was working and they were fine, then I could relax, really love what I was doing with work, come back and be much happier and fulfilled and not frustrated and not, I would have that release and come back and be a much better mother. So I think that was a really important life lesson for me.
What's your proudest career achievement?
Oh. Do you know what? I actually think this little house. I'm really proud of the energy in this house, which I think is a combination of finding a house that just had a lovely energy already. It's 100 years old. It's a little Queenslander. And there was somebody amazing living here, a beautiful lady called Jan, who was Miss Bondi 1957. And she was fantastic. So that felt good immediately. But doing this house, working on this house at a point in my life where I was doing it on my own, and it was something that was completely, entirely mine, and for my children, obviously, but it was a project I was doing without a partner. You know, I was with Alex at the time, but he was in England, and I would talk to him a lot about it, but I was here doing it by myself and loving it. And I remember almost finishing it going, wow, I really like this space. So the whole process was very therapeutic and enjoyable, and yeah, I'm really proud of it.
Well done. It is really beautiful.
Thank you.
What's been your best decision in relation to anything?
Anything.
Yeah.
My best decision. I think moving to Byron. That has been an amazing decision. And I think it's going to be an amazing thing going forward for my children, who have met incredible people at school. They're at the Steiner School here, which they adore. You know, and obviously it was a big deal for them moving. They were leaving friends, and they were incredible about it. And I think it's, you know, it's working. It's good. I think it's going to be really, really good.
Who inspires you?
I think all of my friends inspire me. On a kind of relationship level, be it friendships or how I watch them in their relationships, or I find, and again, that boils down to energy and how they treat each other, how they treat me, how I treat them. My children inspire me because they have this freedom about them in terms of how they make decisions, which I just think is really lovely. They're not bound by all the same constraints that I am. And it's quite good to recognize that and go, oh my God, I have to let go of some of these things to make that decision without the clutter of worrying about this, worrying about that. And on a bigger level, I think nature as a whole, you know, I can be incredibly inspired going for a beach walk and that sense of looking out to sea. And everything, you know, it brings you back to the reality of I'm actually just this tiny little being, and all of this around me is just vast, and it lets all your worries just disappear. You know, it's such a cliche, but it's like a meditation in that it clarifies things and clears and allows you to, and the process of walking on the beach, and you know, you've got this clarity. I find that very inspiring.
What are you passionate about?
Well, I'm obviously passionate about design and spaces. I'm actually really passionate about certain old cars.
I've noticed.
Yeah, so, you know, I've always had this old Citroen, well, for, 8 or 10 years. That was the only car I drove, and I had one in London, and then I got one here, and I completely love it because it's fun. It's like driving a go-kart. So it literally makes me smile every time I drive it. And I couldn't bear the thought of letting go of it. So that lived up here when I was travelling up here, and it lived under the house. And that was my car when I came up here. I wouldn't hire a car, I'd have that. And then last year for my birthday, I bought myself from a very good friend, the Frog, which is an old 1976 Land Rover, Series 2. And I absolutely love driving that. And around here, the roads are incredible. And it literally takes me back to driving when I learnt to drive in England, with all the country lanes with the trees overhead, and you know, you're driving around and you've got these curves in the road, and it's a fun experience, you know, when you're driving just in the city or in, you know, even the northern beaches. It's not really driving, you're just in traffic, you're just waiting for, you know, you get up to second or third. Here you really get to drive. It's real. So I'm very passionate about that. I love just going for a drive. Yeah.
What dream do you still want to fulfill?
I think as much as I'm completely loving living here, and we're right in Bangalore in town, and I love being able to get up and go, right, 6:30, the coffee shops are open, I go and get my chai. Or I love being right in town, but I would also love to be on some land and have a whole load of animals. I'd rescue donkeys and alpacas, and I'd have geese and ducks and chickens and goats. Yeah, I'd have a little farm. That would actually, and a big barn for my old cars. And a horse. I'd have a horse. I grew up riding horses, so that would be something I'd throw into the mix as well, I think.
Sounds like you're putting it out into the world. Who
yeah,
knows
maybe
what
I'm going
will
to
happen.
manifest this.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you reading at the moment?
I'm completely tragic. I don't read novels. I read magazines, design books. By the time I go to bed, if I sit and try to read, I get halfway through the first page and I'm literally, eyes are shutting and I'm asleep. So the only time I read is when I go on a proper holiday.
Well, what about some of your most recent design books that you've been reading?
Well, we've got one right here. And this one I've been devouring, which is Elle Decoration Country. And there's the most incredible timber barn in here, which I'm literally looking at it going, wow, where can I build that? And it's got, they've put a tent up on a mezzanine level for the kids' bedroom with a rope ladder that goes across. Stuff like that I get really excited by. So a lot of mine will be visual stimulation with books like that. And I still love to buy print. I don't, I'll sit and look at Pinterest, I'll Google stuff and look at images online, but I get a lot of joy out of sitting. If I've got time, I might, grab your book, for example, which I adore. It's beautiful. I get a lot of joy out of sitting and slowly going through pages of print, which feels, it's like having Bibles. It's like, I've got boxes and boxes and boxes of books under the house, which there's no way I'd let them go, but I've got nowhere specific at the moment to put them. I might build another room on at some point, in which case I would do a whole library wall and it would be all colour blocked. And so there's a constant array of little design mags coming in or new books. I went into the bookshop in Byron yesterday and bought a book about Rock the Shack, and it's just got these beautiful crazy little cabins. Half of them are built up halfway up the trees, and that stuff I get really excited about. Oh, I've got a big tree in the backyard, maybe I could build a little cabin up there.
What are you listening to? Do you listen to podcasts or otherwise
do you know
music?
what? I actually don't. I have music going the whole time. I just listen to Spotify. I'll pick, and a lot of it will be 70s, 80s, a lot of older stuff, which I love. I listen to Mumford & Sons. I'll listen to Supertramp. I'll listen to The Police. It'll be a whole mishmash, the Rolling Stones, and it'll be playlists where I'll go in and think of an artist that I love and do the radio version of that and the playlist from the radio. So like Nick Drake, if I'm feeling like I want all gentle and peaceful, I'll go find Nick Drake and either play some of his stuff or play a radio session from his music. So lots of alternating stuff, but always it tends to be a mix. Like some of the playlists that are, I think, classic car road trips, or there's some really good 70s and 60s ones of those, where it's just a whole load of music that just seems really familiar, and that you can sing to.
Yeah. No, it's great. And lastly, what advice would you give to your younger self?
To be brave. Which I think on many levels with things that I did, I was. I think if you believe in something, you really will make it happen. And I think the older I get, the more I'm aware of that. It does seem to be this powerful force that you can manifest things. If you believe it, you talk to people, you put the word out there, it starts to happen. And that's about positive thinking and putting that energy out there. I think having faith in trusting your gut reaction to things, which increases your confidence. And I think you know, now that I'm older, you know, I'm a parent, you develop more and more confidence with the wisdom of the career you've had and the people that you've worked with and the jobs that you've worked on. And confidence is so valuable, you know, confidence in yourself and your ability to do things. And that's something I really treasure now that I didn't, you know, I was always willing to give things a go, but I remember times in my really early years in my career where I would stop and go, oh my God, am I going to manage to do this? Now I just jump in and go, right, if it's creative, bring it on, I'll try it. And I know that if I can't do it, I'll work out how to get out of it and I'll pull somebody else in who can. So it's that confidence of knowing, as well as knowing whether you are okay to go ahead and confidently do something. It's knowing when to say, that's actually beyond me, for example. And that's when you bring somebody else in to work with you. Because I think there's something to be said for having the confidence to do that.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Louella.
You're welcome.
Hearing more about your story. And yeah, I really appreciate your time.
You are very welcome. Lovely to see you.
All right, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this interview. Let me know what you think. You can send me a DM at Natalie Walton on Instagram or email podcast@nataliewalton.com. You'll find show notes for this episode at nataliewalton.com/podcast/19. And please don't forget to subscribe, rate and review. I read all of your reviews and they do mean so much to me. Thank you to Jaeger Media for producing this podcast and the people of the Bundjalung Nation where it was recorded. Thanks again for joining me today. I look forward to connecting again soon. I'm Natalie Walton and you've been listening to Imprint.